evening. It is July 30th. Tonight we're going to be going over 2nd Chronicles 26:1 through 28:17, Romans 13:1 through 14, Psalms 26:1 through 6, Proverbs 20:11. Every night we do the Lord's Prayer, so if you will join in with me, I greatly appreciate it. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. Amen. 2 Chronicles 26:1 through 28:27. The people of Judah then took Uzzah, who was only 16 years old, and made him king in place of his father Amaziah. The first thing he did after his father was dead was buried was to recover Elath for Judah and rebuild it. Uzzah was 16 years old when he became king and reigned for 52 years. Wow, Jerusalem. His mother was Jochilah from Jerusalem. He behaved well in the eyes of God, following in the footsteps of his father Amaziah. He was a loyal seeker of God. He was well trained by his pastor and teacher Zechariah to live in reverent obedience before God. And for as long as Zechariah lived, Uzzah lived a godly life, and God prospered him. He ventured out and fought the Philistines, breaking into the fortress city of Gath Jeben Ashdod. He also built settlements around Ashdod and other Philistine areas. God helped him in his wars with the Philistines, the Arabs in Gur-baal, and the Meunites. The Ammonites also paid tribute. Uzzah became famous. His reputation extended all the way to Egypt. He became quite powerful. Uzzah constructed defense towers in Jerusalem, at the corner gate, the valley gate, and the corner of the wall. He also built towers and dug cisterns out in the country. He had he had herds of cattle down in the foothills and in the plains, had farmers and vineyards at work in the hills and fields. He loved growing things. On the military side, Uzzah had a well-prepared army ready to fight. They were well organized by companies under the direction of Jaleel, the secretary, Maaseiah, the field captain, and Hananiah of the general staff. The roster of the family leaders over the fighting men accounted for 2,600. Under them were reinforcement troops numbering 307,000, with 500 of them on constant alert, a strong royal defense against any attack. Uzzah had them well armed with shields, spears, helmets, armor bows, and slingshots. He also instilled the latest in military technology on the towers and corners of Jerusalem for shooting arrows and hurling stones. He became well known for all this, the famous king. Everything seemed to go his way. But then the strength and success went to his head. Arrogant and proud, he fell one day. Contemptuous of God, he walked into the temple of God like he owned it and took over, burning incense on the incense altar. And the priest Ariza, backed up 80 brave priests of God, tried to prevent him. They confronted Uzzah. You cannot do this, Uzzah. Only the Aaronite priests, especially consecrated from the work, are permitted to burn incense. Get out of God's temple. You are unfaithful and a disgrace. But Uzzah, censer in hand, was already in the middle of doing it and angrily rebuffed the priests. He lost his temper, angry words were exchanged, and then, even as they quarreled, a skin disease appeared on his forehead. As soon as they saw it, the chief priest Azir and the other priests got him out of there as fast as they could. He hurried out. He knew that God then and there had given him the disease, Uzzah, and his skin disease for the rest of his life, and had to live in the quarantine. He was not permitted to set foot in the temple of God. His son Jotham, who managed the royal palace, took over the government of the country. The rest of his history of Uzzah, from start to finish, was written by the prophet Isaiah, son of Amoz. When Uzzah died, they buried him with his ancestors in the field next to the royal cemetery. His skin diseases disqualified him for burial in the royal cemetery. His son Jotham became the next king. Big dummy. Jotham was 25 years old when he became king. He reigned for 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother was Jersha, the daughter of Zadok. In God's eyes, he lived a good life, following the path marked out by his father Uzzah. Unlike his father, though, he didn't desecrate the temple of God, but the people pushed right on in their lives of corruption. Jotham constructed the upper gate of the temple of God and considerably extended the wall of Ophel, and built cities in the high country of Judah and forts and towers down in the forests. He fought and beat the kings of Ammonites, and the years of Ammonites turned over 3.25 tons of silver and about 65 bushels of wheat, and another 65,000 bushels of wheat, and another 65,000 bushels of barley. They repeated this for the next 2 years. Jotham's strength was rooted in his steady and determined life of obedience to God. The rest of the history of Jotham, including the wars and achievements of all the written in the royal annual annals of the kings of Israel and Judah. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 16 years in Jerusalem. Jotham died and was buried in the city of David. His son Ahaz became the next king. So he was 41. Wow, it's young. Asa was 20 years old when he became king and reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. He didn't live right in the eyes of God. He wasn't at all like his ancestor David. Instead, he followed in the track of Israel in the north, even casting metal figurines for worshiping the pagan Baal gods. He participated in the outlawed burning of incense in the valley of Ben Ham, and incredibly indulged in the outrageous practice of passing his sons through the fire. A truly abominable thing he picked up from the pagan gods had earlier thrown out in the country. He also joined in the activities of the neighborhood sex and religion shrines and flourished all over the place. God, fed up, handed him over to the king of Aram, who beat him badly and took many prisoners to Damascus. God also let the king of Israel loose on him and resulted in terrible slaughter. Pekah, son of Ramiel, killed 120,000 in a day, all of them first-class soldiers, and because they had deserted God, the God of their ancestors. Furthermore, Zikri, an Ephraimite hero, killed the king's son Messiah. Ikram, the palace steward, and Elkan, second in command to the king. And that wasn't the end of it. The Israelites captured 200,000 men and women and children, besides huge cartloads of plunder they took from Samaria. God's prophet Obed was in the neighborhood. He met with the army when it entered into Samaria and said, "Stop right where you are and listen. God, the God of your ancestors, was angry with Judah, and you used to punish them, but you took things into your own hands and used your anger uncalled for by the irrational, called for and irrational, to turn your brothers and sisters from Judah and Jerusalem into slaves. Don't you see that this is a terrible sin against God? Careful now. Do exactly what I say. Return these captives, every last one of them. If you don't, you'll find out how real angry God's anger works." Some of the Ephraimite leaders: Ezra, son of Jehonan, Bikra, son of Meshiloth, Zechariah, son of Shalom, and the Amas, son of Elad, stood up against the returning army and said, "Don't bring the captives here. We've already sinned against God, and now you are about to compound our sin and guilt. We're guilty enough as it is, enough to set off an explosion of divine anger." So the soldiers turned over both the captives and the plunder to the leaders of the people. Personally designated men gathered the captives together, dressed the ones who were naked, using clothing from their stores of plunder, put shoes on their feet, gave them a square meal, provided first aid to the injured, put the weak ones on donkeys, and escorted them to Jericho, the city of palms. Restoring them to their families, they went back to Samaria. At about the same time, King Ahazi sent to the king of Assyria, asking for personal help. The Edomites had come back and given Judah a bad beating, taking off a bunch of captives. Adding insult to injury, the Philistines raided the cities in the foothills of the west and the southern desert and captured Beth Shemesh, Ajalon, and Jerdoth, along with Succo, Timon, and Gizmo, with their surrounding villages, and moved in, making themselves at home. Arrogant King Ahaz, acting as if he could do without God's help, had unleashed an epidemic of depravity. Judah, brought to its knees by God, was now reduced to begging for handout. But the king of Assyria, Tilgath-Pilzer, wouldn't help. He came instead and humiliated Ahaz even more by attacking and bullying him. Desperate, Ahaz ransacked the temple of God, the royal palace, and every place he could think of, scraping together everything he could, and gave it to the king of Assyria, and got nothing in return, not a bit of help. But King Ahaz didn't learn his lesson, and every time that everyone was turning against him, he continued to be against God. He offered sacrifices to the gods of Damascus. He had just been defeated by Damascus, he thought. If I worship the gods who helped Damascus, those gods just might help me too. But things only went from bad to worse. First, Ahaz in the ruins of, and then in ruins, and then the country. He cleaned out the temple of God and everything useful or valuable, boarded up the doors of the temple, and then went out and set up pagan shrines for his own use all over Jerusalem. And not only in Jerusalem, but all over Judah, neighborhood shrines for worshiping anger and neighborhood shrines for worshiping any and every god on sale. And was God ever angry? The rest of Ahaz's infamous life and all he did from start to finish is written in the royal annals of the king of Judah and Israel. When Ahaz died, they buried him in Jerusalem, but he was not honored with a burial in the cemetery of the kings. His son Hezekiah was the next king. Breakdown of 2 Chronicles 26:1 through 28:27. These chapters contrast the blessing of obedience and the consequences of pride and rebellion. King Uzzah started strong, seeking God, and prospers greatly, but pride leads him to unlawful entry the temple, resulting in leprosy. His son Jotham generally follows God and prospers. Then Ahaz becomes one of Judah's most wicked kings, embracing idolatry and even sacrificing his children. Instead of turning to God during trouble, he seeks help from foreign powers and false gods, bringing greater disaster. The lesson is clear: success should not drive us towards humility before God. No, not self-reliance. Pride destroys what faithfulness builds. Romans 13:1 through 14. Be a good citizen. All governments are under God, insofar as there is peace and order. In God's order, so live responsibly as a citizen. If you're irresponsible to the state, then you're irresponsible with God, and God will hold you responsible. Duly constituted authorities are the only threat if you're trying to get by with something. Decent citizens should have nothing to fear. Do you want to be on good terms with the government? Be a responsible citizen and you'll get out just fine. The government working to your advantage. But if you're breaking the rules right and left, watch out. The police aren't there to just be admired in uniforms. God also has an interest in keeping order, and he uses them to do it. This is why you must live responsibly, not just to avoid punishment, but also because it's the right way to live. That's also why you pay taxes, so that an orderly way of life can be maintained. Fulfill your obligations as a citizen, pay your taxes, pay your bills, respect your leaders. Don't run up debts except for the huge debt of love you owe each other. Excuse me. When you love others, you complete what the law has been after all along. The law code: don't sleep with another person's spouse, don't take someone's life, don't take what isn't yours. Don't always be waiting for you don't have and any other don't you can think of. That don't make sense. Finally adds up to this: love other people as well as you love yourself. You can't go wrong when you love others. When you add up everything in the law code, the sum total is love. But make sure that you don't get so absorbed and exhausted in taking care of all your day-to-day obligations that you lose track of the time and doze off. Obvious to God, the night is about over. Dawn is about to break up. Dawn is about to break. Be able to awake to what God is doing. God is putting the finishing touches on the salvation work he began when he first believed. We can't afford to waste a minute, must not squander those precious daylight hours in frivolity. That's a big word, I haven't used that in a long time. And indulgence, and sleeping around and dissipation. Okay, I'm going to have to look up what dissipation means. In bickering and grabbing everything in sight. Get out of bed and get dressed. Don't loiter and linger, waiting until the very last minute. Dress yourselves in Christ and be up and about. The breakdown of Romans 13:1 through 14 says Paul teaches believers to respect governing authorities because God permits authority to exist for order and justice. He reminds Christians to pay what they owe, including taxes, respect, and honor. However, the heart of the chapter is love. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love fulfills God's commandments because genuine love does not harm. Paul also urges believers to wake up spiritually, recognizing that salvation is nearer than when they first believed. Christians are called to leave behind sinful behavior and put on the Lord Jesus Christ, living with urgency and holiness. Psalms 23:1 through 6. God, my shepherd, I need a thing. You have bedded me down in lush meadows. You find me quiet pools to drink from. True to your word, you let me catch my breath and send me in the right direction. Even when the way goes through Death Valley, I'm not afraid. When you walk at my side, your trusty shepherd's crook makes me feel secure. You serve me a six-course dinner right in front of my enemies. You revive my drooping head. My cup brims with blessing. Your beauty and love chase after me every day of my life. I'm back home in the house of God for the rest of my life. The breakdown of Psalms 23, 1 through 6. David paints a beautiful picture of God as the good shepherd because the Lord is his shepherd. He lacks nothing truly necessary. God provides rest, guidance, restoration, and protection, even in the darkest valleys. David fears no evil because God's presence is with him. The psalm shifts from shepherd imagery to banquet table, showing God honoring and caring for his people even in the presence of his enemies. It ends up with confidence that God's goodness and mercy will follow believers throughout life and they will dwell in him forever. Proverbs 20:11. Young people eventually reveal by their actions if their motives are on the up and up. The breakdown of Proverbs 20:11. Every child is known by his actions, by whether his conduct is pure and right. This proverb teaches that character reveals itself through behavior, words, intentions, and appearances can be misleading, but actions tell the truth. Even children demonstrate what is in their hearts to by how they believe. The principle applies to everyone. Our conduct is evidence of character. God desires integrity when our actions consistently match our beliefs. Tonight was a quick one. If no one told you tonight, hang on, let me get stuff all over me. I love you. I appreciate you. We will see you tomorrow. It'll be July 31st. And then we're into August. We got 5 months left. I love you. I love you. I love you. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.